Hey Harvest Homes, welcome back to Pathway Night video number 2. Hope you guys are doing great and are excited about some more discussion over the topic of evangelism. So when we think about evangelism, what we've said is we want evangelism to be a culture, not an event. And so if it's going to be part of our culture, it's going to be part of what we do as a church, that's going to take time to get into the fabric of our church. And so that's why we're taking a lot of time to really talk about this, teach on this, and we're going to continue to do that because culture takes a long time to build. And it's really important because here's what our mission is. Our mission is so that all people may know Jesus and grow with Him. And so being a pathway church, the first step in everybody's pathway is salvation. It's being able to have the conversation in our neighborhoods, in our social networks, to be able to share the gospel with people, and everybody in the church know how to do that. Because that's what Jesus said, and that's what He commissioned us to do, and that's what we said in the first video. Matthew 28 said, go and make disciples. Well, that go translates in your going, meaning in your daily life, as you go about your work, as you live in your neighborhood, as you go to the grocery store, as you interact with your neighbors, make disciples, being able to share the gospel with people. So one of the stats that is true is that 57% of people come to know Jesus for the very first time through a personal relationship. Okay, friend, family member, neighbor, co-worker, whatnot, right? So that does not mean that Jesus cannot, through the power of the Holy Spirit, save someone on a dime without any relationship with them. Doesn't mean that. It just means that the majority, statistically speaking, the majority of people come to know Jesus through a personal relationship. And let me share with you why. It all has to come down to walls. Okay? So let's take somebody from the north and somebody from the south. If you go to the north, people do not ask you how you're doing as you walk down the street. They don't wave at you and all that. And they're perceived to be kind of snooty or not friendly or whatnot. Well, that's because it has something to do with walls. In the northeastern people, they have a very high outer wall. Okay, their outer wall is very high. They're guarded. They've got their wall up. Why? Very densely populated areas, fast-paced life. And so they have a high wall up. They're not going to stop and ask you all of these different things and how are you doing, how's this person, and all that. Plus, they live in big cities. They don't know everybody. So in the north, they have a very high outer wall. But here's the thing. They have a very low inner wall. Meaning, when you are able to bust through that outer wall, you are now their people. You are now their friend. You are now on the inside. It takes some time, but once you get through the outer wall, you're on the inside. You know what it takes to bust through this wall? Trust. It takes trust. They got to know that they can trust you so that they can let you in. That's it. How about Southern folks? We live in the South. A lot of folks from the South. Well, in the South, our outer wall is very, very low. So we say, how are you doing? We drive down the road and wave at people in a truck. How's your mom and them? We say it, even though we don't really care how your mom and them is. It's just part of the culture. We have a very low outer wall. And so it's easy for us to walk up and talk to people and whatnot, because in the South, more close-knit communities, more rural communities, you know more and more people, you grew up with them, you live in the same area, all of that kind of thing. However, in the South, we have a very high outer wall, our inner wall. Our inner wall is high. So it's very easy to say hello and be cordial and have some surface level conversations. Everybody can do that. Excuse me. It's very easy to have some surface level conversations. Everybody can do that because we have a low outer wall. But it's really, really hard to break through the inner wall and gain that friendship or be included in the family dinner or go on vacation with people. And you know what breaks through the inner wall? And trust is built over time through relationships. So if you take that and you begin to think about sharing the gospel with people, you and I have to do that in a way that we are going to gain people's trust, and we have to do that in a way to where we can break through either an outer wall or an inner wall to be able to enter into and share the gospel of Jesus Christ with them, and that they will trust us that we are for them, not that we want something from them. So that is why it's so important for us to understand that we are able to best deliver the gospel through lay people in the community, because you have the ability to touch people that I will never see. You have the ability to gain trust with people that I will never have. And so as society has changed, what we found is that there's less and less and less trust in and about our society. You're less likely to help somebody with a busted tire on the side of the road because you don't know what type of person they are. You're less likely to answer the door when some random person comes up to the door. Why? Because you don't know what they're selling. You don't know if you can trust them or not. You are more likely to lock your doors at night. Lock your doors in your car. Make sure that the doors are locked when you get out to go eat. You want to make sure where your wallet and keys are, because why? Well, somebody might steal my card. So trust level is very, very low in our society today, and it is the exact same with believers. I'm going to get to why that is in just a second, but let me give you a few more stats before we get there. Did you know that it is estimated that 75% of nuns, no, not the ladies that wear the white and the black and the, all that stuff, rosary beads and all that, but nuns, meaning non-identified or atheists, 75% of them said that if a friend or family member was passionate about their faith and invited them, they would at least be willing to hear about it. 75% of atheists, 75% of people that are not affiliated with any religion or any church would be willing to at least listen if their friend was fired up about their faith. 55% of people said that if a family member invited them to church, they would come. 51% of people said that if a friend invited them to church, they would come. So what that shows you is that trust is a huge factor in getting people to not only receive Christ, but be even willing to listen to the message. Why is that? Well, it's because society's changed. In 1975, there was a man by the name of Engel he's a professor, and he created the Engel scale. And what the Engel scale is it's a way to capture where people are at in their faith. And he did that on a negative and positive type of thing, where 0 was when someone had a conversion, and they had +1, +2, +3, +4, +5. +5 ended in, guess what? Multiplication. They were people who were multiplying themselves. The negative kind of showed where people were and how far away from the faith they were. And in 1975, at a -10 was they had no God framework, meaning they had just never heard of Jesus. But around -3, -4, they understood the need and they had some biblical background. Well, fast forward to 2023, if there was a new Engel scale created, there wouldn't just be a -10, there would probably be a -11, a -12, and a -13, because nowhere on that scale in 1975 was there people who were opposed to the faith, people who were identified as Satanists, people who had no interest in the faith. It was just an unawareness of God. And so back when we could go door to door, when there was high trust level, back when we could communicate the gospel on the street and there was a high trust level, Engel said that most people were around a -3 or -4, meaning they understood they had a need, but they had just not heard it yet. We could assume from 1975, 1980, and 1990s that most people understood they had a need and they had some form of biblical background. Well, 23 years later, that is no longer the case. In Colorado, there was a woman who died who lived between the church that I pastored and a church down the hill, less than a mile away. And she was 80 years old. She had lived in between these two churches her entire life. And one of her family members said she had never heard the gospel before in her entire life, living right between two churches. In our first Pathway Night, someone shared a story 30 years ago here in the Bible Belt where they began to communicate with a boy and began to give him a Bible, and upon giving him a Bible, they realized that he had never even heard the name of Jesus. So people who are at a negative 10 and have never had an awareness of God, or people who are at a negative 12 or negative 13 who are vehemently opposed to God or is worshiping something else, it's going to take time for us to bust through the outer wall or the inner wall or the skepticism, and we're going to have to do that through the context of relationship as we build trust in those relationships. So, when we talk about evangelism, and evangelism being part of a culture, we have to talk about discipling people in a way that teaches them how to have conversations, how to develop friendships, and how to engage with unbelievers in a way that will break down these walls and will create trust with those people. You know, when Jesus engaged people, he did so in a way that he showed them that he loved them first, and he was able to break down these walls very quickly and was able to communicate that he was the Messiah and able to communicate the gospel with them. That is what we as a church have to begin to get really proficient at doing, is being able to break through the walls, being able to develop relationships so that we can see people come to know Jesus through those relationships. One last story. We had a gentleman come to church a few weeks ago, and the first time during the invitation, he actually went to somebody who was praying and began to tell them about a challenge that he was having in his life. He got prayer there. And then he came back the next week. And he came back the next week. And then on the fourth week, I believe it was the fourth week, he gave his life over to Christ in one of our services. Right? It was someone who the wall was able to be broken down very quickly to where they could receive the love not only from the people of God, but also understand the love of Jesus for him, and he was able to receive Christ. That's what we're talking about when it's being part of a culture and not just an event. It's part of our daily life. As we go, we are making disciples so that all people may know Jesus and grow with him. We'll see you next time.